Hello everyone. Today we're going to step into a scenario so vast, so unfathomably terrifying, it has evaded serious contemplation. Until now. Imagine you're walking through the Amazon rainforest, 1,000 shades of green humming in the background. Life so vibrant, it feels eternal. Now, imagine it all gone. Replaced by a crater, a fireball, and silence. You may not know, but the facts show that with 15,000 nuclear weapons on Earth today, we could obliterate every major city, every one, with bombs to spare. But let's up the stakes. What happens if we detonate all of them at once? Picture this. A pile of every nuclear weapon in the world, compact enough to fit in a modest warehouse, sitting in the heart of the Amazon. There's something oddly mundane about that image, isn't there? Something bureaucratic, like we're stockpiling canned goods. But inside each warhead lies a sun trapped in metal, and we just lit the match. In an instant, a fireball expands 50 kilometers across, vaporizing everything. Trees, rivers, animals, gone. The blast wave flattens 3,000 square kilometers of ancient forest. A few seconds later, anything alive within 250 kilometers begins to burn. What would it feel like to stand 200 kilometers away and watch the horizon rise like a second sun? Could you even comprehend that kind of heat? And then the sound. A pressure wave that doesn't just knock over trees. It talks to the world. It circles the planet, once, twice, a dozen times, whispering in frequencies you can't hear but that your bones remember. People in Tokyo hear a dull thump, like a god dropped something heavy in another dimension. What kind of legacy would such a sound leave behind? As the mushroom cloud reaches the edge of space, millions of tons of debris and radioactive particles hitch a ride into the stratosphere. The cloud reflects sunlight, cools the earth, and poisons the rain. The Amazon becomes a burning wound, the size of a small country, and the fires spread like angry fingers across the continent. The zone of death expands not just with heat and flame, but with radiation, invisible and patient. Would survivors in the surrounding regions even understand what's happening? Or would the fire consume their questions too? The fallout begins to travel. Slowly, methodically, carried by the jet stream. Countries downwind suffer silently. Cancers bloom in quiet bodies, crops fail, animals vanish. The world doesn't end, but it flinches. Brazil disappears behind a veil of ash, but the rest of us must now answer. What does it mean to live on a planet where an entire biome was sacrificed for a hypothetical? Oddly enough, Earth keeps turning. Most humans survive. But South America becomes a myth, a place people used to fly over and marvel at. Now they whisper stories about the red cloud. Some still argue about whether it was necessary. A test, some claim. A message, say others. But the radioactive soil won't argue back. It just glows. Curiously, a few animals adapt quickly. Insects flourish, fungi spread. And in the corners of charred ruins, tiny life begins to poke through. The earth, resilient as always, begins to stitch its skin. But what about us? Can a species that did this ever trust itself again? And here's a question for you. If we had the button in front of us, with all 15,000 warheads prepped and humming, would anyone really have the courage to not push it? 3 kilometers. That's how tall our next nightmare is. Imagine a cube, 3 kilometers high, wide, and deep, composed not of steel, stone, or soil, but of nuclear death. This isn't a warehouse-sized pile anymore. It's a man-made mountain of annihilation, dense with the yield of 10 billion Hiroshima bombs. And the raw ingredient? Every ounce of uranium Earth has to offer, mined and forged into humanity's final fireworks. Now take a step back and ask yourself, if we had the power to end everything, would we? With a blink, Our hypercube of warheads erupts. A searing light tears the sky apart, and for one final moment, the Amazon becomes the center of the universe. The fireball roars so high it's visible across half the continent. The crust beneath it doesn't just crack, it liquefies. Bedrock behaves like water, splashing out in every direction. Entire mountain ranges vanish before they can echo their final silence. And in those first seconds, the planet mourns itself. Can a forest scream if it's turned to vapor? What comes next is chaos beyond chaos. A crater 100 kilometers wide swallows Brazil's heart. Debris doesn't just fly, it's catapulted into orbit. Some rocks escape gravity entirely, leaving Earth forever like cosmic teardrops. Others climb, hesitate, and then return with fury, raining down like molten death across the globe. It's not just the Amazon burning anymore, it's everything. Atmospheric temperatures spike as the air turns to fire. Cities ignite spontaneously. Oceans boil at their edges. The sky darkens not from nightfall, but from a shroud of ash so thick it smothers the sun. A nuclear winter wraps around Earth's shoulders, quiet and suffocating. Within weeks, temperatures plummet to near freezing. Crops fail in every country. Famines bloom faster than relief can follow. Is this the moment where civilization breaks or bends? Famous astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson once commented that humans are the only species that can imagine their own extinction. But now, imagination has become memory. Every large animal species begins to die. From lions to elephants to whales, they collapse in the cold, unable to adapt fast enough. Insects, fungi, and microbes inherit the earth. Their reign begins in silence. Global earthquakes ripple outward like sorrow waves. The earth's crust trembles as if trying to shake off the pain. Cities like New York, Tokyo, Paris all become abstract ruins, flattened not by bombs, but by the echoes of one single explosion. The world rings like a broken bell, each toll another country's fall. How long before we forget what civilization even meant? The oceans churn. Winds howl at 500 kilometers per hour across the southern hemisphere. Hurricanes and typhoons stack atop each other, howling beasts born of imbalance. Firestorms race the winds, consuming continents already gasping. North America is buried in ash. Africa blinks out under a veil of black snow. Europe freezes beneath a sky it can no longer recognize. Is there any direction left to run? Radioactive fallout wraps every inch of Earth in poison. Entire food chains collapse. Rivers run dry, not from heat, but from a lack of evaporation. The sun can't reach them anymore. Humanity's final monuments are not statues or pyramids, but hot zones, places no one will walk for 1,000 years. Did we become gods, or just very clever apes with a suicide wish? In bunkers, submarines, and deep earth shelters, survivors cling to breath and memory. Nations that spent centuries preparing for war are now reduced to huddled whispers in steel cocoons. Some try to broadcast, to reach others. Hello? Anyone alive? But the static answers back with a truth no one wants. This is the end of history. There are still people arguing about the event. Was it sabotage? Was it an AI misfire? Did someone mean to do it? But the world doesn't argue. It lies still, cold and gray, like a forgotten photograph. The astronauts aboard the ISS marvel for a while, staring down at the wound they can't fix, until the debris hits them too, and then even the stars go dark. Every religion on Earth, every philosophy is suddenly very quiet. There's no one left to pray, to write, to warn. The silence becomes sacred. The few that do survive might crawl out in decades. But what will they see? A planet too tired to care, still steaming with regret. What story would they tell their children, if they dared to have them? And here's the question. If this is how we go, was it a mistake? Or did we see the fire coming and still choose to walk into it? In the end, the noise stops. The final rumble fades into the soil, the last echoes of a catastrophe so vast it outlived its own sound. Deep below the surface, the lucky, or perhaps the cursed, begin to stir. Submarine crews, sealed beneath miles of ocean, hover in darkness. Bunker residents turn off their last working radios. There's no signal, no news, only silence. What happens when the last humans look out into a world they no longer recognize? The surface is blanketed in soot and silence. Earth's sky, once a kaleidoscope of light and air, is now a ceiling of ash. Every breath is a gamble. Every step forward is through radioactive dust. It snows black in the ruins of once great cities. The bones of skyscrapers reach out of the frost like fingers begging for help that will never come. Can hope survive in such a place? Time stretches in the cold. Bunker rations dwindle. Submariners gamble with power systems and count days in battery life. In some shelters, desperation takes over. In others, community blossoms. People relearn how to farm in fungus-lit caverns. Children grow up never knowing what blue skies looked like. But the moment always comes. The day someone has to go outside. And what do they find? A world paused mid-breath. Trees are no more than charcoal spires. Rivers are sludge, still glowing faintly in places where the fallout hit hardest. Wildlife is a myth. The silence is so complete, even the wind feels like an intruder. In the distance, somewhere beneath the dust and black ice, the planet's heartbeat pulses, slow but steady. Earth isn't dead, just sleeping. But will we be awake when it heals? 1,000 years pass, the radiation subsides. Ash settles, green returns cautiously. The planet, ever patient, begins to wear a new coat. Forests grow in spirals around craters. Flowers bloom in places where cities once stood. The Amazon does not return, but something wild and unfamiliar takes its place. And without humans, life seems freer. Is this redemption or insult? One day, intelligent life emerges again. Maybe they are primates, or perhaps something wholly alien, octopuses that walked the land, birds that traded feathers for clever hands. They begin to explore, to ask questions. They dig into the earth and find a strange layer. A smear of radioactive elements, microplastics, and fossilized bones. One thin band in the planet's crust. A geological footnote marking a species that rose and fell in a heartbeat. Would they pity us, or fear becoming us? They reconstruct what happened. Debris patterns, isotopic anomalies. They argue over whether we ever saw it coming, whether we tried to stop it. Some believe we were destroyed by war. Others think it was a single accident, an experiment gone wrong. They never agree. But our story lingers in their debates. Some even find our ruins. They decode our symbols, piece together scraps of language. In cracked museum glass, they find a child's toy, a broken phone, a tin can labeled peach halves. And somewhere, someone among them might whisper, what were they like, these people who built fire and turned it on themselves? There are still people arguing about the event, even then. Was it inevitable? Were they cruel or just foolish? Could they have changed? But the earth offers no testimony. Its wounds are overgrown. Its skies are blue again. It doesn't remember our wars, our fears, our gods. It remembers only the fire. And so in the quiet return of life, in the leaves that dare to reach toward the sky, there's a whisper. Not of guilt or apology, but of possibility. The future always belongs to the survivors, and the planet, indifferent and ancient, remains the ultimate survivor of us all. So we return to that final question. If we could go back, just a moment before the first button was pushed, what would we do? As the final echoes of humanity's most catastrophic act fade, the Earth begins its long, silent healing. The fireball that vaporized a continent becomes a scar in the planet's memory, not its soul. Survivors linger briefly, haunting bunkers and wrecked submarines, but even their determination fades against the cold, the radiation, and time. Yet Earth, resilient and untouched by guilt, rebounds. New species rise. Forests of unfamiliar life replace what was lost. Millennia later, intelligent beings discover our layer in the crust, a thin radioactive whisper of a species that wielded fire without wisdom. They debate, they mourn, they wonder, but life continues. And so the story of humans ends not with an answer, but with a question. What if we had chosen not to burn?